Hey guys, I'm recording a long, probably hour-long, maybe longer, exclusive video for Patreon, for my Patreon subscribers. So if you want to support this channel, if you want to support my long-term future in the vegan movement, if you want to support what I do on YouTube right now, if you want to support the creation of this kind of content, please click on the link below this video, come to Patreon, and support my channel. However, in this excerpt, this opening snippet that I'm going to share on YouTube, I'll just mention, if you've been watching this channel for one full year, just about 1 year ago exactly, I flew to Germany to see my daughter. And at that time, I held up a tube of toothpaste on camera. In a video in which I wasn't particularly sad on screen, but you could tell by my voice and so on that I was really pretty upset about various things in my life. Really, I mean, although the situation, my divorce and my daughter is one thing to be upset about, a lot of the misery I was dealing with in Canada had to do with conditions at my university. The hopelessness of trying to learn Chinese or Japanese in that university department. The hopeless position it put me in, studying at that university in terms of my own long-term career and so on. And so there were many, many sources of stress in my life at that time, including searching for a job, searching for a PhD program, etc. But about 1 year ago today, I held up a tube of toothpaste on camera for a special reason. And I said, that tube of toothpaste, I bought it the last time I saw my daughter. And I decided, out of pure literary symbolism, indulging in literary symbolism in one's own life, I would use that same tube of toothpaste every day until I saw my daughter again. So that tube of toothpaste I bought in Taiwan when I was together with my daughter in Taiwan. And then I made that tube of toothpaste last for, I think, more than 1 year. It was a good-sized tube of toothpaste. And while I was in Canada, I had this, just looked bizarre because it was in Chinese. I had this Chinese tube of toothpaste that I bought in Taiwan that I used day after day, every day, during the long year and more when I was waiting to see my daughter again. And then when I traveled from Canada to Germany to visit my daughter, I had that tube of toothpaste with me. So I was in Germany using this Chinese toothpaste. And of course, it's enough time. It was getting pretty close to empty. And I decided to continue the tradition. I decided that I would buy a tube of toothpaste then and there when I saw my daughter again. And then I would use that same tube of toothpaste every day to memorialize or commemorate her as this kind of literary symbolism in my life until the next time I saw my daughter. So before, I was in Germany using a Chinese brand of toothpaste, and now here I am in China, and I have a German brand of toothpaste that I've been using every day since the last time I saw my daughter. It was big. It had a lot of quantity. I mean, it was a really big, fat tube of toothpaste when it started. And now, day by day, this is getting closer to empty. So the question is, when is the next time I will see my daughter? Now, I had some bad news. Don't worry, there's good news coming after it. I talked to my lawyer at one point, and when I asked him, I said, look, I really need an estimate from you for when is the next court date going to happen in France? Because from my perspective, the next court date I absolutely can't lose. It's just a matter of making it happen. It's a matter of getting the paperwork done or what have you. And I talked to him once, and he said, look, honestly, it could be another 12 months. Not worth explaining the reasons why, etc. But again, this is not, for those of you who know some of the legal details of the case, it's a very one-sided case. To say it's weighted in my favor is an understatement. I basically just have to show up and prove that I'm alive. But I need I need the court system in France to get its act together so I can show up and deliver proof of that. And then basically, as long as I'm alive, I will regain the right to spend quality time with my daughter, and then we'll have to go through negotiating a schedule and making arrangements and what have you. And we don't know whether my daughter will come here and spend time with me in China, or if I'm going to have to go to Europe, or how we're going to work this out, or both. Could be all of the above. But it's one of those things you're left to interpret a silence in the court system very often. I think someone in the French court system took a glance at my legal documents and realized, oh my God, this is a real miscarriage of justice. We really need to prioritize this case, because there could have been another 12 months delay And instead, I now have a court date coming up in early February. So like instead of 12 months, after only like say 2 months from that point, less than 2 months, I think, my court date, my case was prioritized. So you don't get an explanation for that kind of thing in the legal system. But in this case, I do think somebody was looking over the documents and realized, wow, this can't wait. This can't be on a regular schedule. This needs to be stepped up. So I was getting concerned because if it was going to be another 12 months, this grand old tradition I've started of relying on the same tube of toothpaste until I see my daughter again, I would be pushing my luck. I don't think this can last another 12 months. But if I only have to go until February, if I'm going to be back in Europe and back in court in February, then I guess I can keep this tube of toothpaste going until early February. And I guess when I get that court date, whether or not I see her, I don't think I'm going to actually see her in court. I don't know how much will get accomplished in that trip. I'll buy a new tube of toothpaste in France then when I go to court. And then I guess I'll be back here in China with a French tube of toothpaste instead of a German tube of toothpaste. So, it's the best of times. It's the worst of times. I never wanted to have a separation between the Patreon videos and the YouTube videos where I'm only talking about my personal life on Patreon, like where that's more private, and where YouTube is more public. I really want to avoid that. If you want to join Patreon, it really, in terms of Q&A, in terms of questions from my viewers, that's where I take questions. And many, many videos on this channel are replies to Patreon viewers, Patreon supporters. I think that fundamentally rewards the $1. It's also true that it's only on Patreon that I give opinions on things that, one, I'm not an expert in, and two, I don't think my regular YouTube videos would demand to know. So to give an example, I have a video, what are my thoughts on feminism and on third wave feminism, and that's Patreon only. Not because it's private, not because it's secret, but because that's an example. So I'm not an expert in the history of feminism. It's not my forte in terms of politics, political science. And that is something people ask me about many times, but I said, okay, this will be a Patreon exclusive video. But I wouldn't want to be in a situation where I talk about my divorce or my legal cases or deeply personal things only on Patreon. Because for me, one of the reasons to be on YouTube in the first place was to talk about deeply personal things in my life, past, present, and future. As simple as it is, I do continue to struggle with that. I continue to struggle with the question of where do you draw the line between Patreon exclusive content and made for YouTube, made for my broader audience content. But in a sense, the fundamental redeeming quality this channel has got is keeping it real. And in a very real sense, I would not be keeping it real if I was only sharing those private elements of my life on Patreon. Then by definition, the whole YouTube channel would become phony, even if it's only 10% phony, right? And I'll say this in a small way. Many times before on this channel, I have shouted out the guys who really invented the game here on YouTube. Guys like The Amazing Atheist and Onision. Onision is a comedian here on YouTube. I was really thinking in the last couple of weeks, say the last 2 weeks, I was thinking I really wanted to bring more of my personal life in the present tense onto YouTube and onto social media generally. I'm now a member of an Instagram substitute, a website called Nice. I can give you the link below. And on Nice, this basically a photo sharing platform like Instagram, but Instagram is blocked in China. I can't use Instagram. It's illegal in China, whatever you want to say. So on this app Nice, I made a trip from this city to another city in Dahong and back again, and I took photographs of this incredibly beautiful place. Sorry, this is a bit odd. I have this on screen, but the surroundings here are just incredibly beautiful from my perspective. beautiful and interesting and inspiring in many ways. I'm taking these pictures, and some of them are literally pictures of tropical fruit and pictures of the palm trees. And I'm thinking, you know what? What's missing here? There are no pictures of the other people in my life, whether those are friends or girlfriends or acquaintances or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's been so long since I first started this channel. When I started, I wanted to have other people on the channel talking about politics with me. I wanted to have other people sitting in a chair next to me. I don't just mean via Skype. I wanted to have more other voices. And I was really thinking to myself, maybe this should be my New Year's resolution for 2017, is to have less and less content in which I'm isolating myself and presenting myself in this packaged way. Because again, it's not phony, it's not fake. What you see about my life on the internet is real, but what's missing from it is exactly the other people. It's just me. And that in itself creates a kind of illusion that I'm more isolated than I am. Even though, if I had made an effort when I was in Canada to put more of my friends in Canada, barely had any friends in Canada, but I did have some short-term friends, I had some acquaintances, whatever. I had some friendships that were not particularly deep when I was in Canada. If I had put those people on camera, whether in photographs or videos, in a sense it would be nice that I could now look back and remember them. But those people, most of those friendships were not friendships that were going to last for 10 years or last the rest of my life or anything. But in a sense, that's even more of a reason to bring those people in, Although it could be great to have long-term friends on camera too. Anyway, guys like Onision and The Amazing Atheist, one of the reasons I shout them out is that I think they really showed us, if you're new to the YouTube game, if you're thinking about coming on YouTube, they showed us the risks and the rewards of how this platform can work, And just a couple days ago, so I forget it was 3 days ago or what, I happened to see one video from Onision in terms of his current, drama unfolding on the internet. He's, fighting with his wife, and his wife has a girlfriend, and he has a fight with his wife's girlfriend. I sat there and I looked at this and thought, what was I thinking? I just thought, wow. For many different reasons, on many different levels, I could never put myself in a situation as terrible as what Onision has done to himself repeatedly. Onision is a very, very stupid man. I think he's much less evil than people imagine and much more stupid. But wow. It was a really interesting moment because for me that was a wake-up call where I suddenly had to ask those questions from a very different angle. And I think you guys may have heard me say this a long time ago. I think it's the most important element of sympathy is the ability to use sympathy as an analytical tool. Like the point isn't to sympathize with Onision so I feel bad for him or something. It doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. I look at Onision and I sympathize with the situation he's in. And I realize, I might think bringing someone on camera, or whether, again, even if it's just photographs or just talking or bringing them on, doing a podcast together, I might think that's safe. I might think that's harmless. But wow, then you see the kind of dangers this poses and how it can derail everything you're trying to do politically. And it can even derail what you're trying to do in just being honest and share what's going on in your real life. So, look, this is a totally symbolic, in a really weird literary sense, this is a symbolic gesture in my life, this issue of the toothpaste. I think, the way I've been talking about my situation with my daughter, my ex-wife, it has largely been symbolic. It comes up, my video that I think is my most important video on this channel, my vegan manifesto video, which is titled On Community, a video that's now in 10 languages, if you include English as a language. But we translated that into Chinese, Japanese, so many languages. We still don't have Swedish. The Swedes never stepped up. I've asked several people to translate into Swedish, and they never come through. But anyway, that video on community, it doesn't state in an overly emotional way, but it states very factually, but very passionately, look, I have a daughter. I have to think about my daughter's future. I have to think about my future as a parent. I have to think about my role in the community. And growing older, I have to think about, theoretically, my grandparents being in an old folks home and my daughter going to school, and how that's part of life as a vegan. Veganism is not just about the permanent vacation. It's not just about a lifestyle in this isolated sense. Instead of a lifestyle, talking about the full cycle of life: parenting, growing old, dying, daycare centers, schools, hospitals, etc. And vacations too. Vacations are also part of life. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a kind of not overly melodramatic way to just insist again and again how I see myself and how I'm living my life really has a lot to do with my daughter. The bottom line is, it was mentioned again in my video now giving an apartment tour, the reason why I'm learning Chinese at all is utterly linked to my daughter. And all of my questions about my own future in terms of my education and everything else are still very much linked to my daughter. And, there is an emotional side to it. The sorrow you go through in being separated from a child, especially when you have the real uncertainty about whether or not you'll ever see your child again, which was definitely true, say, 1 year ago. Right now I'm very optimistic because I have a court date in February, and I can't lose this case. There is no way for me to lose this court case. I just need to have the case. The case just needs to progress. So, right now I'm very optimistic that I'll see my daughter again relatively soon. But there's been good reason at many different points for me to suspect or fear that I'm not just separated from my daughter temporarily, but that my ex-wife was, out of sheer malice, going to prevent me from seeing my daughter basically forever. And so, just two very simple things. My connection to my daughter is the fundamental reason for why I'm learning the Chinese language, a language I don't really want to learn. And it's also the fundamental reason, as most of you guys know, for why this YouTube channel exists. So that even if I never saw her again, if I get hit by a bus, or I take an airplane and my airplane crashes, or if somehow my wife pulls off some kind of legal trickery to prevent me from seeing my daughter, it seems impossible at this point, but maybe it's possible. At a minimum, one day in the future, 10 years from now, my daughter can sit down and see these YouTube videos and know what kind of guy I am. So, click on the link below this video, join my Patreon channel, and I hope you guys will stick with me over the long haul for this journey. This channel is not about drama. It's not about veganism. It's not about any one topic. This channel is about me and my life. And the most hilarious complaint I get from viewers, which I get only once in a while, but over time I do get it again and again. So, a couple times a month, people complain to me. They complain, why is he talking about himself? Like, they ask this in a quick comment, or they'll write to me directly saying, why are you talking about yourself? You shouldn't talk about yourself. And they'll say that in videos about veganism, but even on other topics, where it's like, well, why are you talking about who you are and why? To me, it would be very, very phony if I didn't talk about myself. If I just came on and presented a perspective on Cambodian politics or veganism without talking about why I care and what my connection to it is. But again, fundamentally, this channel is not called Welcome to Veganism 101. It's not. It's called à-bas-le-ciel. This channel is about me and my life. And if you stick with this channel, or if you join the Patreon and stick with me on Patreon, you're going to get to see whatever my life becomes. My life has changed so much in the last 1 year, so fundamentally, been through so many dramatic changes and periods. And, in some ways I know what's coming up in the next 1 year. I have a 1-year contract. Exactly 365 days from now, I will have already left China. But for the next 1 year, I will be living here in this beautiful and fascinating part of Asia, learning Chinese, doing other kinds of research and what have you. When I return to Canada, doors to other kinds of activism and political organization will open for me, assuming I'm living in Canada. If I go back to Europe, I could be living in Europe again. Different kinds of activism will open for me. I'm very much a grim realist about the prospects for, political activism, organization, etc. in the years ahead. But you guys know that I have the passion. You guys know that I have the intent. And you know that I'm constantly looking for any positive opportunity I have, whether it's on the level of organizing a charity, organizing a foundation, whether it's just organizing friends, or maybe starting a small business like, the vegan restaurant, vegan pancake restaurant or something. I am looking for those things all the time in my life, and I'm looking to connect with and collaborate with other people who are on that same footing of trying to build something positive for a vegan future. So, for better and for worse, if you stick with me, if you support me on Patreon, you'll get to see all the phases that goes through. And it's possible there will still be dramatic changes. Right now, still to this day, even speaking Chinese, even if I go back to Canada speaking Chinese fluently 1 year from now, I think the only career paths open to me will be a police officer and joining the military. Still to this day, I don't think there are any other positive career paths open for me. So I could end up doing that kind of work, which would be entertaining for you guys to watch in some ways. But maybe also I'll enroll in a PhD program after all. I'll get more of a formal academic footing. Maybe I will go more directly into government. One of the things that's appealing about being a police officer, it can be a stepping stone to eventually getting elected to city government, local government, alderman, this type of petty elected office in government. Maybe I'll get a master's in public administration and get more directly involved with a government job at the same time as pursuing vegan activism. At this point, in Canada, I do not think I would become a lawyer or go to law school. But those question marks, what can I say? This is the reality of what my life is, and these are the uncertainties about what my life will become. A short time ago, I thought that, so someone in the audience is asking, what about becoming a paramedic? So I gave up on that plan a long, long time ago. But there was a time when I was enrolled. It wasn't just a plan, when I was actually enrolled to become a paramedic in a paramedic college in Canada. That's been mentioned probably on this YouTube channel. Anyway, it's the same thing with the court case with Durian Rider that's still ongoing now. One of the complaints I hated, which only idiots gave me, but some complete idiots wrote to me saying, you promised Durian Rider would go to jail. I said, no, I didn't. I said, I promised I would pay a law firm and we would file charges. And I said at every stage, everybody is innocent until proven guilty. And I said at every stage, you can't know the outcomes. I did not promise to put him in jail. I promised to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And at every single stage, I philosophically reflected on the fact that, you don't know. Like, it may sound stupid, but like as an objective fact, we don't know if he's guilty or innocent. We don't know if the case has merit. You find out the hard way. You put together this case and you press these charges because you believe the case has merit. You believe it's the right thing to do for veganism. You believe it's the right thing to do out of a sense of justice and injustice. There are so many reasons to do it, but it really bothered me when people said, you promised you would put him in jail. No, I'm not giving you any false promises. But likewise with activism, I've never been promising something I can't deliver on. There are some other, YouTube channels who promised, extreme and edgy forms of activism, who promised they were going to start a revolution, who promised street protests, who promised some kind of in-your-face activism or confronting people or what have you. And then often they lose interest in that pretty quickly. Like, sometimes they try for a little bit. I'm not promising any specific form of activism. I'm promising that you get to see my own exploration, my own discovery of what's possible and what's impossible in the year ahead and in the years ahead, plural. And there's no false humility in that, right? One of the ideas I'm now pursuing, you guys probably know. I guess I'll give the link. I think it's a great video. But, I made videos with the script for this storybook. I wrote a children's storybook. I wrote it in Chinese, translated the Chinese into English. I'd love to get an illustrator and publish that storybook. That idea was first proposed on this channel for another YouTuber. Another YouTuber was lamenting or questioning how he could be a meaningful part of the vegan movement and why he didn't get any respect in the vegan movement, which I think are sincerely questions worth asking. I don't want to ridicule him for that. There are other things we maybe should ridicule that guy for, but it's another story. But I initially said, look, if you're in this position where you don't have a lot of options, you're living in Asia, here's something positive you can do. Write a storybook, get it translated into several languages, get an illustrator, get a publisher. So I just say that was originally advice I gave to someone else, and then whatever, a year and a half later or something, I'm following my own advice. So there are absolutely no false promises. You get to see this very uncertain, stumbling process for myself as an individual and maybe for the vegan movement around me. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think I'll have a lot of time while I'm here in China. I've been worried at many stages. One of the reasons why I've uploaded so much in the last year was that at several different stages I was really worried, what if this is my last YouTube video ever? What if I'm cut off from the internet for 1 year, for a long time? And on a technological level, there were reasons to really be concerned about that. But if I do have the time to put into really contributing even just this digital demi-monde, I wonder how I can reach out to other people and collaborate with other people and do something positive. I wonder if I should be doing something more like putting up, a weekly discussion show. Sorry. That's the real China outside of my window, beeping its horn at me. Anyway, I wonder if I should put up a weekly discussion show reviewing and talking about what's been going on in veganism at large and, of course, veganism on the internet. I wonder, if I can bring in more people through Skype or otherwise to make this more of a positive crossroads. I wonder and I ask myself those questions all the time. And even though those may be small and shallow questions, they are questions about effective activism. And they're questions about in what ways can I be an effective activist within the time constraints and financial constraints of my real life. So, there's a guy named, Redneck2Vegan. I'm going to actually promote him on this channel within the next couple of days, I think. But shout out to him. I think for a lot of us who are fully grown adults in this, people who are not teenagers, people who didn't just sign up yesterday, if you're sincere about ethical veganism, there's always going to be an asymmetry between your ambitions to change the world and your ability to actually make a difference. And once you are an adult, the main reason why that asymmetry is so extreme is just that you have other duties. You have other moral obligations. I have a very real moral obligation to my daughter. And part of that obligation involves earning money. And most of you, whatever, if you're over 30, but probably if you're over 20, likewise, you have a life that's not about lifestyle, that's not about personal beauty, that's not about being on vacation. Even if you come on the internet and pretend that's what your life is about, you probably have a life that as you get older, a larger and larger percentage of your time is taken up by, frankly, moral obligations, and those moral obligations are tied to economic obligations. So that's something we all struggle with. And, the ambition that drives you as an ethical vegan is so enormous. It's so enormous compared to the time and energy you can put into even just trying to find the tools or trying to find the other people you can cooperate with or trying to research a charity or foundation and see what you can do. I mean, you have this enormous ambition to make the world a better place in terms of ecology, in terms of animal rights, etc. And then you have a few hours in a week and you ask yourself, am I going to do a book review or what? Because it is for the movement. Right now, I want to do a book review of a new book, 2015 book by Gary Francione. Let me get the title correct. Gary Francione, Animal Rights, the Abolitionist Approach. So that's his latest. That's his new book, And, I invite you guys to join in on that. If other people want to read that book at the same time as me, I think that's great. It's not activism, it's not advocacy, it's not anything. But I mean, that is a meaningful sense in which you're doing something for the movement, where you're thinking, okay, I want to read this book so that I'm up to date with what the debates are within veganism as a political movement. I want to come on the internet and state my own perspective, state my own review. I mean, it is something positive for the movement, reading and reviewing a book like that. But I know, and I'll do this. I'm going to do this now. I'll give a link to that book. Right now in China, I'm not even sure how I can get that book. I need someone to send me a PDF. I tried ordering it on Amazon. I can't. I can't order it as an e-text. I can't order it as a Kindle. I can't order it as a book on paper. Somehow I've got to get the book. It's another story. Maybe someone is going to respond to this video, help me out. But I know for a lot of you, whether you are washing dishes in the back of a restaurant, or you're literally on a boat in the U.S. military, or you're an architect, or you work at Walmart, no matter what your job is, the type of commitment, time, energy, emotion, and money ultimately, to feel involved with veganism and pursuing a vegan future, and to actually be involved making a difference, very, very difficult to do. And guys, one of the things I'm infamous for, is saying from the start, what we're doing here on YouTube, what we're doing here on Facebook, what we're doing here on the internet, whatever portal you're using, what we're doing here on the internet is not activism, and it's not a community, but it could be the basis for activism. It could be the basis for community in the future. There is one sense in which it resembles a community. And as much as we talk about negative peer pressure within the vegan scene, the vegan digital image, which is very real. In my video on anorexia, you can talk about the fact that people feel they have to be thin and wear a bikini in order to be a vegan activist, and then this connects to eating disorders and crazy health diet scams and all these other problems. There's negative peer pressure, but one of the positive things about committing yourself to this digital portal is that with what little time and energy you've got, there can also be positive peer pressure. You don't feel as isolated. You don't feel as much alone. And I am alone. I just moved to Dahong, China. I'm living beneath the palm trees near the border with Myanmar in a part of China where nobody speaks English and nobody's vegan. Fascinating part of the world. But the reality is I'm not lonely. I'm alone. And it does resemble a community in that one sense, that you feel you can or you should live up to a higher standard, that you shouldn't let other people down. And I think a lot of people who commit to this, who start making YouTube videos or start representing veganism on their own website or blog or writing articles or on Facebook, I do think that probably many of those people, not me, but probably many people, at some point they maybe wanted to cheat, they wanted to waver, or they wanted to go from being vegan to being just pescatarian or reducitarian. They wanted to kind of think out on the movement. I do think you can feel a sort of positive peer pressure that may prevent people from dropping out, may prevent people from losing hope, but may also positively motivate you, just in that small way, to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to read this book. I'm going to do a book review. I'm going to stay up to date with what's really going on in the movement. Because I feel that I'm not alone. I feel that I'm part of a circle of people, even if they're people you only know by email. And they care about the movement also, and they care about me, and they care about my contribution to the movement, no matter how small or how humble it might be. So that's all I've got to say, guys. Join my Patreon if you want to hear the full podcast. I've got a long list of other topics I'm going to talk about. But there you go. Those are my non-resolutions for the year 2017. Keeping it real. No false promises. No false hope. Just real talk. Hit me up.